Hey YouTube, I wanted to make this quick little video just on the eve of Ryzen, AMD's uh, new flagship CPU. It's about to be released Thursday. Today's Monday. There's been some rumors that actually they'll have the NDA lifted on the benchmarks tomorrow, so we may actually be getting a whole bunch of new benchmark info. Anyway, I wanted to make this video in praise of something that pretty much gets no love at all, and that's the Bulldozer Steamroller Architecture. So behind me is my personal computer. It's an AMD FX-8350, just an 8-core processor, 4 gigahertz, mildly overclocked. Have it water cooled. GPU is an AMD Radeon Fury. Got 16 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM. It's all being powered by a Corsair AX860. And this has been a wonderful machine. When I built it, Haswell was just coming out, so the Ivy Bridge stuff was being phased out. There was some, I had some internal discussion about whether or not I wanted to even have the, to go with AMD, or whether I should go ahead and buy like the 4770K, which at the time was Intel's fastest. I mean, there's the Ivy Bridge E stuff, but Haswell was where it was at. And the amount of value I got for my dollar on the AMD side was so much higher. It was less expensive for highly multi-threaded applications like Handbrake, like MP3 encoding, compilation. It was almost as fast as the 4770K, almost. For games, it was not as fast, especially if the game was primarily single core oriented. However, I mostly run my games GPU limited. If my game, so I have a 60 hertz monitor. This is the HP. Which one is it? NV32. The NV32 is 60 hertz. So if I'm getting 60 hertz, I like to run in VSync. The screen tearing has always been kind of a problem for me. I bought this prior to the advent of FreeSync stuff. It was expensive at the time. So when I bought this setup, it was decently fast, and the 60 hertz was the constraining factor. If my settings could do 100 frames per second, I needed to up the visual quality. And in fact, for a long time, I ran several games that I played a good bit using dynamic scaling, so that it was being rendered at 4K and then downsampled to 1440p, which is what this monitor is. And you get really beautiful visual fidelity that way. You use up all that extra horsepower that the GPU is not doing. Out of all of the modern games now, I can't think of any, at least the stuff I play, and I'm not a big strategy gamer, so if we were talking about like Civ 5, Civ 6, or StarCraft, maybe this would be a bigger deal. But for all the games I've played, Battlefield, Doom, Heroes of the Storm, Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, Tomb Raider, Overwatch, none of those have dropped below 60 frames a second because of the CPU. It's always because I've bumped up the visual quality levels or tried to run it at a higher virtual resolution than what the video card could handle. It's never been the CPU. So yeah, okay, it runs hot. It's 125 watts. And if I'm doing strictly single core stuff, it's not fast. But for anything that can actually use the 8 cores, or for games that, even if they're only using 4 of them, are able to run above 60 frames a second minimum, the CPU, so what if the CPU can't do 150 frames a second? I don't have a 150 frames a second monitor. If I was doing a 144 hertz setup like some of the competitive gamers do, and I was willing to lower my graphical fidelity settings to the point where I could actually pull off that frame rate, then yeah, the FX chip would have been a problem. But since I'm not doing any of that stuff, it's been great. It has never had any instability at all. When I first built it, I had a subpar power supply in there. Once I put in a decent power supply, the Corsair 860 never had any stability problems at all. Could run it 24/7, cranked up all the way, overclocked, never any problems. That's a testament partially to Asus for making a great Pro motherboard. It's a 990 FX Pro, but also AMD for making a great chip. For everything that I like to use, it has been a really wonderful processor. So I liked it so much that when I was upgrading a computer for work, which was a really old system, it's a 4-core, 4 gigabyte of RAM, like an old system. I started looking at what I should put in there, and I was looking at some Intel i3 systems. It's work, and it's mostly what I'm doing on there is have 40 Chrome browser windows open and Spotify playing and that kind of stuff, maybe some after hours gaming, some lunch break Overwatch kind of thing. And so I was looking at some i3s, and one of the things that people had said when they were upgrading, it's kind of a long story, when they were upgrading from 2600Ks, the Intel Sandy Bridge i7s. So they said the processor was still fine, like they could overclock it great, they could get good frame rates out of it, but they were missing a lot of the cool stuff that the modern motherboards can do. And you can't just get a new motherboard for the i7 2600K because they don't make those anymore. You can't buy, I think you can still get Haswell stuff, but it's been a long time, years, since I've seen an Ivy Bridge motherboard on the store shelves, like a Micro Center or something, or maybe you could special order them from somewhere. Well, anyway, where was I going with that? Oh, yes. So I thought, well, if I build a 990FX or an AM3 Plus system, won't I run into the same kind of thing? Like, I won't get the modern motherboard stuff. And the modern motherboard stuff includes things like, better overclocking support, enhanced motherboard audio, sometimes with nicer audio capacitors, a better DAC, an isolated PC board. I wouldn't get things like M.2 support, or YouTube support, or USB 3.0, or 3.1, or Type-C, like these kinds of things that you want to expect on new motherboards. So people looking at those to upgrade from the 2600K, sometimes they're wanting to upgrade just to be able to get on a new motherboard because of all those extra features that are now we take for granted, but at the time, we just didn't have them. Well, so when I went shopping to see what kind of motherboards were available for the AM3 platform, I found an ASRock 970 with all of the modern stuff. It had USB 3.1, it had Type-C on the back, it had M.2 support, PCI Express storage only. It wasn't M2. You couldn't use a SATA M2 in it, but who does that anyways? The whole point behind that is for PCI Express storage. Great overclock support on the memory. High-end VRMs so that you could run. It was certified to run the FX-9590, it draws an insane amount of power. So it's like, if it's certified to run that, you can overclock your 8350 on it, no problem. And then other things kind of appealed to me about it as well. The 8350 now comes bundled with the Wraith cooler, and the Wraith cooler is probably the finest stock cooler I've ever seen. I've been building PCs since the mid 80s. I remember when the 486 first came out, and they actually had glued on passive heat sinks to them. Before that, there was no heat management on the chips at all. The 386s, it was just a chip just sitting there. There's no heat sink, no fan, no nothing. And the 486 had a heat sink, right? So I mean, I've seen stock cooling since when it first came out as a thing. And this was the nicest stock cooler. It was big, sure, but it was quiet. The Wraith cooler was quiet. It was nice looking. It cooled really well. Like even a mildly overclocked setup, the stock cooler could keep it cool and be quiet doing it. And to get that kind of cooling performance, the cooling performance I get out of the stock AMD cooler, I probably have to spend another $20-$30 on something like the Hyper 212 Evo, perhaps. I wouldn't be able to use the stock bracket. I mean, installation's a little harder. Anyway. So not only did I spend money on the chip, which was cheaper than the equivalent performance Intel chip, I got a full-featured motherboard that had modern stuff on it, the kind of stuff that people on their i7 2600Ks are looking enviously at Skylake, not for the performance of the chip, but just to get on a modern motherboard. This one had all that stuff. And I get bundled with that. I don't need to buy cooling. I can just use the cooler that comes in the box, and it's great. It's fantastic. And that setup, motherboard, chip, cooler, the whole thing was less than $150. So like, think about that for a second. A chip that in a multi-threaded performance test is faster than an i3, maybe not quite i5 level, but a Skylake i5. It was definitely faster than the Ivy Bridge i5, but at multi-threaded. Not quite as fast as the Haswell i7, but in there. Gaming performance for my casual gaming, where it's not going to be the bottleneck. It's not going to. It's going to push 60 frames. It's going to be up to my video card and monitor to get more than that. But the CPU it's not going to be the bottleneck. And I get all of this with the cooler for less than $150. Now, granted, this is at Micro Center. They had a cool bundle deal going on there, $40. But I mean, think about this for a minute. The AM3 motherboard that I used, great overclocking, lots of features, multi-GPU support, like it's a nice motherboard, was without the bundle stuff, just by itself, $45. $45 for a brand new motherboard with modern features on it. The value there, the amount of performance bang for the buck was so high that it was a really easy choice. The i3 machine that I was looking at would have been more expensive and would have been slower at heavy multitasking kind of stuff. And if I'm sitting there with 20, 30, 40 Chrome tabs, all of which have their own process, so it's a highly multi-threaded kind of thing, each one is trying to do, Web 2.0 overlays and video ads and everything else, with Spotify running, with Outlook, while I'm editing documents in Word or Excel, viewing stuff in Acrobat, like all the normal stuff I do for work, it's going to be better than the i3 at that stuff. And it's not going to slow me down in games. And it's significantly less expensive. And the motherboard's nicer than the equivalent inexpensive motherboard on the Intel side. And the stock cooler is actually worth something, so I save another $30 there. Like, why wouldn't I purchase this? And if you say, you don't get any forward compatibility. Like, Ryzen comes out, it's aimed for my investment in AM3 stuff doesn't mean anything anymore. True. It doesn't mean anything anymore. But that's going to be the case no matter what I do. As many times as I've built a machine thinking, this motherboard is an investment. I will put a better chip with this motherboard in the future. I never do. Because the next generation comes out, even if technically it would fit into the old motherboard, the new generation stuff has better stuff, better features, and I want that motherboard that supports those new features on it. I don't want the old motherboard that may or may not be backwards compatible. I prefer the new one. So a platform cost for that low and give that kind of performance, I thought was just such an easy sell, an easy buy. And I know we talk about the Bulldozer architecture as being a failure, didn't have great single core performance. Excuse me. AMD figured that the world would go multi-core faster than it actually did. So yeah, we came out with these really bad benchmarks. Yeah, I mean, sure, all that stuff is true. And if you wanted the absolute best gaming performance that money could buy, you would not have bought an FX. That's just true. However, there's more to buying a computer than just picking out whatever's fastest and then purchasing it. Some of us have to make our computing money stretch and get the most for what we want, for what we can spend. And that's what FX was for me twice. First, back, when Ivy Bridge was fading and Haswell was coming out. And then again, after Skylake was released, it was still a better bang for the buck for my application. So it's a long video, and maybe it's because FX has been out for a long time at the top of AMD's product stack. And I'm really excited. I'm as excited as anybody else for Ryzen coming out. I think it's wonderful to see more competition in the CPU desktop space. My next CPU choice will probably be an AMD Ryzen. But I'm going to look back with some degree of not nostalgia, but gratitude for putting together a really nice architecture. One that was different enough. They tried something different with it. Lots of cores, lightweight cores, some shared resources. It ran into all sorts of problems at the beginning. Windows 7 didn't know how to schedule threads across it properly. Windows 8 and 10 do, but at the time, people are trying to play games on these things, and you have something that is barely dual-threaded, and they're both running both threads are running on the same module, sharing, a scheduler and cache and floating point. And of course, the performance is terrible. And once you figure out where to schedule those tasks on the cores, you get a lot better performance. But by that time, everybody's kind of got it in their heads that these things are terrible. And they're not as fast as Intel stuff. But they're so much cheaper. And they give you such a nice experience using them. I didn't see any reason why not to buy another one. So anyway, congrats AMD on coming out with a new chip. I really look forward to seeing the benchmarks tomorrow if the NDA lifts, or Thursday if we have to wait till launch day. And thank you for watching.